This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Coming up on This Week in Agribusiness, dairy producers explore ways to give school kids more options at lunchtime. Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. There's a lot happening in the world of agriculture, and there's stuff happening in Congress. Next week, we're going to see Congress debating whether or not to give school kids more choices when it comes to dairy. Joining us now to discuss the issue is Claudia Larson. She's the Senior Director for Health Policy at the National Milk Producers Federation and the Senior Director for Government Relations at the organization. And Claudia, tell me, what is the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act?
Well, thanks so much for having me on today and for discussing this really important legislation. The Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act is a bipartisan piece of legislation that's currently in the House being led by Congressman G.T. Thompson from Pennsylvania and Congresswoman Kim Schreier from Washington State. It expands the types of milk that schools can choose to serve to their students through the school nutrition programs. A little bit of background right now, students can access skim milk, 1% milk, plain and flavored, and of course our lactose-free varieties of that. And what this bill does is it actually expands those options so schools can choose different methods for improving their kids' nutrient intake.
And Claudia, I understand a big part of that is getting the option of whole milk back on those lunch trays. What's the value of that for school students?
Sure. So right now, nationwide, we have a child nutrition problem where school-aged kids and adolescents aren't taking in the nutrients that they need to grow and thrive. Milk, whether it be skim, 1% whole milk, lactose-free varieties of all of that, offers 13 essential nutrients that are absolutely vital for kids' health and development. And so by expanding the options that kids can choose to put into their bodies, flavorful options, popular options like 2% in whole milk, we're increasing access that students have to those vital nutrients that they need to be healthy.
Claudia, I know my fridge has whole milk in it right there. It's my preferred form of milk. What's been the response in Congress when this piece of legislation comes up? Are they willing to give kids the choice of whole milk?
Yes, in general, there is broad, widespread bipartisan support for this. So for example, in the House measure has 134 co-sponsors serving in districts across 44 states in the United States. So we do know that there is broad bipartisan support for this bill. It passed earlier this year through the House Committee on Education and Workforce, which has jurisdiction over our child nutrition programs. It passed out of that committee with bipartisan support. So again, we're seeing a lot of broad bipartisan support for this in the House and then also in the Senate measure.
So let's talk about the roadmap to get this done. We've got the House vote next week. Then we need Senate co-sponsors. Is that where we stand today?
Yes. So next week, we are expecting this bill to come to the House floor, expecting it to pass, again, because we have that broad bipartisan support. And then after that, right, the bill would need to pass in the Senate. So currently, there is a Senate version that's introduced, again, also broad bipartisan support there. And so we're really, really hopeful that if we get a really strong vote coming out of the House, it's going to help signal to the Senate that it would be great if they would pick up their measure and move it as well.
So let's talk a little bit about what we can do. If we've got audience members who are also whole milk drinkers and they want to see kids have those choices at school, how can we help encourage this process?
Sure. Absolutely. So yes, we are really hopeful to get a strong vote out of the House next week. So anything that people can do to reach out to their members of Congress and encourage them to vote in favor of this bill so we can signal to the Senate that they should move their version as well would be extremely, extremely helpful. So you can call your member of Congress, you can email your member of Congress, and if you want, you can always go to National Milk's website. We have a button there, or we call it our call to action button, where we have it set up with this campaign. So if you just go to nmpf.org, or if you just Google National Milk, we're the first thing that pops up. You can scroll towards the bottom of that main page, and it says take action here, and it says, click here if you'd like to support increasing access to nutrients for our children. So there's that option there if you prefer. Or again, you can just call your House members, send them an email, and encourage them to vote yes for the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Let's make sure that America's kids have all the choices they need at lunch. We appreciate that from the National Milk Producers Federation. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IF-VF tires with AD2 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. This week for our market discussion, we're joined by Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing. Dwayne, we have not talked a lot about the wheat market over the past couple of weeks, but it certainly appears to have come to life. Fill us in. What's happening in wheat?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. China finally started stepping in and buying some of our wheat. Now, it's the Chicago wheat market, the SRW, so the other two complexes are a little bit disappointed, but I don't care. We finally got low enough, maybe with a combination of a lower US dollar recently. China stepped in and bought our wheat and bought it rather aggressively here the last week and a half.
So, Dwayne, they've made some big purchases. We've put a pretty good rally on that March wheat contract, 60, 70 cents, I believe, since the end of November. How aggressive do you want to get on some sales?
Sadly, I think so many of our producers are still working on last year's crop and selling that we're hoping for a little bit more. You know, you look at that chart, you look at how far we've fallen. I know everyone wants a little bit more. Right now, I guess I'm just letting the market run. And one of the main reasons I am is how heavily short the funds are in wheat, especially all three exchanges, probably close to record short. So this could have a bit of a pop to it, Mike, just because of the funds getting out of short positions, especially going into the end of the year.
From a technical perspective, Dwayne, are there any targets that you're keeping an eye on should those funds start to exit?
Yeah, what I would look at is maybe some retracement levels, 38% retracement level, maybe the 50% retracement level, but remember how high we were just a year ago. I don't think we can quite get up there. So about that 38% is what I'd be looking for.
All right, Dwayne, looking at the other feed grains, I would imagine this sort of strength in the wheat is probably supporting the corn market as well. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I think it is. It's been a nice change, hasn't it? Normally it's been the wheat market going down is pulling corn down. Now it's probably crude oil's turn to pull corn down a little bit, but corn's been standing on its own fairly well since we had that recent low here about a week and a half ago. I'm not like crazy bullish the corn market, but I'm at least friendly enough to say I think that low should hold. And yeah, the higher wheat complex definitely does help pull the corn up.
You mentioned crude oil, Dwayne, possibly pulling corn lower. I know ethanol production has been running strong. Is crude down enough to start to curtail that ethanol grind?
Well, it's definitely eating into the profit margins of the crushers, that's for sure. And it would be nice to see crude oil rally. You know, you got to watch that crude oil market for really all commodities. It really felt like earlier this week when crude went below $70, that pulled everything else down with it. The problem I'm seeing is you look on the production and the demand side of it, it doesn't scream that crude oil has to go flying higher anytime soon. But fingers crossed we're making a low fairly soon. You know, we had some long-term lows at that 65 level. Maybe that'll hold.
All right, Dwayne. Thinking out at, you mentioned China stepping into the wheat market. Are there expectations that China's going to step in a bigger way into the corn market in the near future?
There has been some recent talk of that, and that's fairly exciting. They've been buying a lot of Brazil corn. Of course, that big crop last year with a long tail is eating into our exports. Right now, China's bought about 20 million metric ton out in the global supply right now. There is talk that they could buy 30 to 40 million metric ton of corn. If they're going to do that and build the reserves, that they're going to have to come to the U.S. and that would be I want to say a game changer. But remember, we do have big supplies here too. But that would be great to see. But that's just trade talk for right now, Mike.
It's trade talk. And Dwayne, what do we think China would be buying? Would this be old crop corn, or would they likely be buying some 24 corn after harvest?
Well, I think it's this year's crop here is what they'd be buying. And obviously, they don't need that much corn, actually. Their economy is rather negative right now. So I think that what they'd be doing is just building the reserves. And I don't know why they're doing that. I don't care as long as they buy my corn. That's all I really care.
Absolutely. Dwayne, for an up move in the corn market, what's a target price you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, you know, $5 first is resistance, obviously, and then $5.25, $5.35 is where I'd like to make sales. We're going to have a lot of farmers selling above that point.
That's true. That is an attractive price, folks. That's Dwayne Bussey. We'll be back for more market discussion after this. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IF-VF tires with AD2 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. Dwayne Bussey of Bolt Marketing joins us this week for our market discussion. And Dwayne, I want to turn our focus to soybeans. That has been a flat market for the past several weeks. How are you advising growers to handle their marketing?
Well, first thing is maybe build a time machine, go back to when we spiked to $13.98, and I wasn't smart enough to sell that. We spiked up to nearly $14 on a drought scare in Brazil, and rightfully so. The problem is we've pulled back down about $1 to $13 area, the support area, because Brazil's gotten some scattered rains. Now, scattered rains, Mike, aren't good enough to rebuild that drought that they've had. It was pretty severe. The problem is, and I think what the trade's figuring out, is Argentina last year had half of a crop. And this year, with just normal trendline yields, they're going to help out Brazil in the total South America soybean production. So even though Brazil's off the high expectations from earlier, right now we're kind of thinking that it's still going to be a large crop out of South America. So hence the pullback here.
Now, and Dwayne, I also understand that the Brazilian Ag Ministry has been releasing expectations for this crop, and they're still growing. Is that right?
Yeah, they trimmed it just a little bit this past week. CONAB came out with a 160 million metric ton for a soybean crop. That's down from their 162 prior. But the problem is last year's record crop was 154. So see what I'm talking about? They were planting so many more acres this year that even though the yield's coming down due to drought, they're still going to have more than likely a record crop. Now, some people are as low as a 150 million metric ton for a forecast. So it's still a weather market, and soybeans are still going to spike up and go down based on weather forecast in Brazil.
From an export perspective, Dwayne, of U.S. beans, how depleted is that Brazilian stockpile getting? Should we see international buyers come back to the U.S. here in January?
You know, I think we should now. I think Brazil's finally run out of last year's record soybean crop. Now, you know, China would rather buy from them if we're being honest. So, I mean, how much they buy from us during our narrow window for exports probably depends on the size of that new crop coming, and obviously still back to the weather then too. But like we mentioned in the previous segment, China seems to be building reserves of everything. So they might buy a little bit more beans than we thought. And remember, on the soybean side, we don't have a lot of extra to offer. So if we can get some demand and a little bit bullish forecast, soybeans could maybe get back up to my $14 level that I won't let go this time.
All right, Dwayne. Well, let's look over at the world of livestock. You and I have been singing from the same hymnal when it comes to cattle market demand for the past several years, but it looks like it's changing. Can you talk about the difference between the fundamentals and the futures market price here over the past 6 weeks?
Yeah, well, that's been a really hot topic lately here. You know, people feel like the production's still down. Cattle supplies are still light, right? And they're supposed to be even lighter in 2024. So why is the market crashing? Well, the funds are big players in all of our markets, and they were buying cattle from our COVID low all the way to this last year's high. And right now, you know, whatever the reason being, they want out of those long positions, Mike. And when they get out, there's not enough small traders like myself to buy into it to offset it. So down we go. Now, sadly, it seems like the futures market is leading the fundamentals down as well, because now the cash market is following the futures market down as well. And you know, maybe that's rightfully so. Maybe there's more supplies than we anticipated, but it's been an ugly market lately. And sadly, I think the funds have more to sell.
They have more to sell. Dwayne, how does the cattle feeder manage this risk exposure that's developed so quickly?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to all do the same thing. We're going to look back and go, well, I wish I should have sold there, and I can't do anything now. But that's not the truth. I mean, I understand not selling the board after a $30 per hundredweight drop, but put options, LRP insurance, things like that put a floor on the price but leave the upside open in case we get that bounce. That's what I'm going to push really hard on here.
Dwayne, do you anticipate a bounce coming in the first or second quarter of next year?
Boy, that's a great question. I would think so, but sadly, Mike, it probably depends how low we get in the next couple of weeks here. We could drop all the way to 141 in nearby cattle. That'd be a 50% retracement. Then you could see a nice bounce.
All right, lots to watch in these livestock markets. Dwayne Bussey, Bolt Marketing, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
This week's Ag Tech segment is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Recently, I had the chance to talk with Lars Dierud, the president and CEO of Earth Optics, and I asked him, what is Earth Optics?
Yeah, we're a soil mapping company with an emphasis on mapping. So what's unique about us is we still take soil samples, which is the traditional way to get soil information, but we take a lot fewer of them because we're also mapping fields with an array of sensors, and we use machine learning to combine the soil sample information with the sensor data. It allows us to deliver really high resolution, accurate soil maps at a fraction of the cost.
And this is new technology. I think of the soil maps I've looked at in my time, they've been prepared through grid sampling and all of this leg-heavy lifting type work. This is going to change the game, isn't it?
Yeah, we're really excited about it. And I think previously you kind of had two options to get soil information. You could do grid sampling, costly, time consuming, but at least let you know what was going on and how variable your field was at whatever grid you were willing to spring for. So 2.5 acres, probably the most common. everyone I know would rather have 1 acre grid, but it's even more expensive. Soil, of course, varies at even much higher resolutions than that. Or your other option was zone sampling, and so now you're treating huge swaths of your field the same way, and especially that's for different attributes, that might not be what's needed. And so we're kind of combining the two concepts and using machine learning to make a bespoke zone map for every soil attribute of interest. And so it's like having a new zone created for you for every attribute every single year.
That's fascinating. So as we think about soil mapping, a lot of times growers that I've encountered, they use it to plan their inputs, get their crops planned for what's going in the ground next year. Is there any opportunity on the back end as we think about these developing carbon markets that are coming around?
Yeah, absolutely. So Earth Optics is probably doing about 60% of the carbon quantification for soils in the U.S. for various insetting or programs associated with the food company and offset programs where it's a buyer like Microsoft who's purchasing soil carbon credits. And so, yeah, we're seeing more and more opportunities for data to add value to what farmers are doing, not just from their traditional operations like you mentioned, but to create value for the ingredients that they're producing. And so by delivering sustainability-oriented data, it's really that audit trail that is allowing food companies to pay more, it's kind of a decommoditization trend that's happening, and we're really excited about it, and data is what powers it.
What's new in the 2024 season?
Yeah, we're really excited. We just announced a partnership with Trace Genomics. And so that allows us, really one of our big goals was enhancing the accuracy of some of the carbon mapping we do, but it really gives us a new opportunity to offer a whole new set of test products that they already deliver to their customers and for us to make map for them. So we're already doing soil health mapping with various types of soil health metrics in addition to the carbon, the nutrient, and the compaction mapping we're already doing.
Farmers signing up with Earth Optics, is there a time of the year you recommend they get started with you guys, or can they jump on board anytime?
Any time of year. We obviously do our work when the crops are in the field, so we're busy in the spring, we're busy right now in the fall, but they can sign up with us any time of year.
Where can they go for more information, Lars?
Our Earth Optics website, earthoptics.com.
Thank you, Lars, for that update on Earth Optics. And folks, stay with us. Later on in the program, we'll meet the Organic Grower of the Year, so leave it here.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Dr. Paul Sundberg has served as the inaugural executive director of the Swine Health Information Center, and he recently announced his retirement. I had the chance to talk to him, and he reflected on his tenure as head of SHIC.
SHIC started in July of 2015. So it's been eight plus years. Well, you got to think back to 2013, and even before then. In 2011 and 2012, at the veterinarian meetings that I went to, we sat around the table and we talked about diseases around the world. And one of those was porcine epidemic diarrhea, PED, and we talked about it being in China and all the stuff that happens and all the problems it creates. And then we all nodded our heads and said, boy, it's a good thing we don't have that here, and we got up and left and didn't think about it anymore. So that was before 2013. 2013, when we got it, when it hit, I was with the National Pork Board. And we had to fund over $1 million worth of research within a month just to learn lessons about PED, how to manage it, what is it, where's it coming from, how do we manage it, how do we get rid of it. We had to chase after all those questions. The board of directors for the pork board at that time realized, didn't just say, but they realized that we got PRRS, we got circovirus, in 2011 we got influenza, and now in 2013 we got PED, and we're doing the same thing over and over again, chasing after we get them to try to figure out what we should do. And then they said, let's not keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. Let's do something different. And that was the genesis for the Swine Health Information Center, and why our mission statement is clear that we are to deal with emerging diseases. That's what we're after, looking over the hill to try to predict what could come at us, both internally in the US as well as around the world, and then make sure that if we can't prevent it, we can at least be prepared for it.
Let's talk about that preparation, because as you mentioned with PED, it was here, SCHIC didn't exist, the industry had to adapt. Since then, I understand SCHIC did a lot of research on biosecurity, how the disease is transmitted. What have you seen since PED has still been an issue as the research has come out? Does the industry adopt it fairly quickly?
Oh, yes. No, the issue with adoption of research and new ideas is all about making it implementable. You can do all kinds of research on all kinds of things and get really good answers, really good researched answers. But if it doesn't make any economic sense for the producer to do it, nobody's going to listen to it, nobody's going to care because they can't afford it. So you've got to make it practical. The research that we do has to be practical, it has to be applicable to the farm, and it has to be implementable by the producer.
That's so true. And SCHIC has really worked to prepare a number of those different biosecurity protocols. Dr. Sundberg, is that something you think is vital as you look to the future here in the swine industry?
Oh, the biosecurity in the industry has changed, evolved so much over the well, through my career, of course, but even the last 10 years. There is so much more emphasis and understanding about disease pathogen transmission and how to get in the middle of that, and that's biosecurity. All about keeping things on the farm if you break with it, or keeping it off the farm if you don't have it. And we've made a lot of progress in that. You're never done. Because the weak point about biosecurity is that you have to do it every day. It's only as good as the weakest moment that you have. And if you have a weak day, then you've done all that work for the last year and it's gone. Doesn't make any difference because you've got to do it every day. That's the hard part about biosecurity implementation.
Absolutely. Making sure everybody on the team follows along and all those best practices are followed. But it's vital, Dr. Sundberg, as we have seen so many times in recent past as these diseases break and destruction follows. Now you're retiring, as I understand it. End of 2023, you'll be stepping down as the executive director.
I'll be getting out of the way.
Getting out of the way, but the work isn't done. As you look over the hill before you step down, what are the diseases of concern in the hog industry right now for you globally?
Well, if you're talking disease specific, of course, African swine fever is the thing. Now, we've got foot and mouth disease around the world. We've got classical swine fever too. Any of those three get into the U.S. and that's going to be really a devastating deal. But we're really under a lot of pressure from all of the ASF virus that's out there. And that's our biggest risk right now as far as something that would affect the industry in that big a manner.
Yeah. Looking out, that risk is going to be there. As you mentioned, it only takes 1 weekday to have an outbreak develop. SCHIC will be continuing to fight these battles and do the research. Can you talk about what's coming for the organization?
Yeah, Dr. Megan Niederwerder is going to be the executive director in January 1. Dr. Lisa Beckton, who's now with the Pork Board, is going to be the new associate director. And so we're talking right now about, they're putting together their plan of work for 2024, what they want to get done. All of the things, we're gathering all that information from producers, from veterinarians, from researchers, from a whole lot of different places, putting that together for what's going to happen. I'm looking forward to watching it. I'm looking forward to any kind of projects that may come as opportunities, but I've got every confidence that Megan and Lisa are going to keep going.
Thank you, Dr. Sundberg, for your work here protecting America's hog herd. I know I'll be excited to see what comes out of the Swine Health Information Center in the years to come.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. You know, our friends at BASF are always looking for that next thing to give farmers a little additional peace of mind when it comes to their production on the farm. Recently, Max Armstrong had the chance to sit down with Kim Tudor from BASF, and they looked at what's coming from that company here in 2024.
Review for us what BASF offers for corn and soybean growers in terms of
disease protection.
BASF is always leading with innovation. In terms of our fungicide portfolio for corn and for soybeans, for corn we have Veltima fungicide, which is our third generation of fungicide that we brought to the market, alongside with Revitec, which is for soybeans. Again, a third generation fungicide, and we also have Headline Amp and Preaxor for corn and soybeans respectively.
Kim, I gather farmers are increasingly watching for tar spot.
Oh, for sure. We've seen upwards of 50 bushels per acre losses. Once you've got the infection, it's there.
For that person who's out scouting their fields, what do they look for?
Every disease has what we call a latent period. So it's that time between initial infection and reproduction. And it's that reproduction when we actually can start to see those lesions with our naked eye. One of the reasons that tar spot has been so problematic is because of that really long latent period. So you take a disease like gray leaf spot that has a latent period of 7 to 10 days. Tar spot has a 14 to 20 day latent period. So that's 2 to almost 3 weeks before you can actually see a lesion with the naked eye.
So it can have a good head start on it.
Absolutely, and you won't even be able to detect it. And so scouting, although good, and we need to scout, right? This new disease that's kind of shaken, the marketplace, if you will, really requires a proactive approach. We've seen these lesions take over plants in a matter of days and turn these plants from healthy and green to looking almost frosted in appearance.
Share with us your insight on Veltima and talk about the value of it.
So Veltima fungicide is our lead recommendation for tar spot control in corn. And it's got that Revysol component, right? So it's going to provide that long-lasting disease control. Veltima fungicide also offers environmental stress mitigation. So cooler canopy temperatures, increased root growth. You've got fast uptake, so you don't have to worry about a quick shower coming in, and washing it off the plant. It's bound really strongly inside the plant and has that really long metered residual control. So helping protect the plant overall, no matter what stress or what may be coming at the plant, whether it's a disease or an insect or hail. Harvestability is also really important in the corn world. So making sure those plants stay healthy and strong and greener longer, they continue photosynthesizing so that they can get that crop out of the field at the end of the season.
So for the grower who wants to find out more, how do they best go about it?
They can visit Veltima.com or Revitec.com or reach out to their local BASF representative.
Thank you, Max. And folks, you can see the full Plan Smart, Grow Smart series on the website. Just visit plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Yes, Greg Solier's here with a look at the sky. Greg, out in the Pacific Northwest, I understand they have had ample moisture. Is that going to continue?
Looks like a quieter weather picture out there for this week, but yeah, the past 10 days to 2 weeks, areas, Willamette Valley, Rogue River Basin, Big Ag areas, 5 to 10 inches of rain, plus rapid snowmelt, plus that rainfall too. So things a little bit higher than you'd like to see on some of the streams and rivers here. And it's more of an onshore flow this week, but no big upper trough for now. So a couple of showers lingering into coastal sections early parts of the week. Otherwise, high pressure across the northern Rockies out towards the Bitterroot Chain, Treasure Valley. A couple of snowflakes, higher peaks of the Rockies. That's it. And it's another run of windy, mild weather. Virtually no snow on the ground across the Dakotas. And an absolutely glorious go of it last week. 64 degrees, record high temperatures up at Great Falls, Montana, and more of that warmth expected to play on out as well. Here's a warm front on the move, downslope winds through some of those mountain passes, both through the Canadian and U.S. Rockies, probably some gusts 60 to 70 miles per hour, and some pretty healthy winds too across the northern plains. But temperatures at or well above actually seasonal expectations. A system offshore of the Pacific Northwest inconsequential. So a pretty quiet weather picture, drier one this week into the Pacific Northwest. The southern extension of all this upper wind pattern is kind of a southern stream feature coming out of Southern California. Moisture starved again, once again with high pressure here and a clockwise flow. It's a drier flow into California. Some frost over the past couple of weeks, but temperatures have moderated. Some warmth into the plain states and a couple of showers west end of the winter wheat belt of no measurable concern or consequence. We do have a little boundary here. System coming through West Texas, cotton. A couple of spotty showers. Wind and warmth and no snow cover, and temperatures again again, almost at October-like levels there, Mike, across the Great Plains and portion of the week, and quiet too through the valleys of California.
Greg, do those warm and mild conditions extend all the way across the northern Corn Belt?
They do, northern Corn Belt, maybe the northwestern complex as well, not before one little weak cold front makes its way across the northern parts of the Corn Belt. Still some single-digit percentage corn in the fields through sections of Wisconsin, Michigan, and down through Ohio, but we're pretty much done just crossing T's and dotting I's on the outdoor work scene. Cooler weather for the Dakotas, the wind and the warmth across the areas of the divide, and quickly building into the northern plains. A couple of sprinkles and snowflakes of no concern. Warm up for the western Corn Belt into the Mississippi Valley, and high pressure across the eastern complex. A good go of it here. No winter storms here to speak of this week in December across the plains and much of the Corn Belt. Here's that system down across the Rio Grande, mountains of New Mexico. A couple of snowflakes and sprinkles, otherwise high pressure and control. Coming off recent rains and some modest drought improvement across the lower Mississippi Valley Delta region. And again, with the sunshine, even December sunshine on the bare grounds and drought-ridden grounds for that matter across Kansas and Oklahoma. Pretty good go of it with outdoor work. Still, again, the worst of the drought pattern here. A couple of showers on the southern branch of the jet across the Big Bend area of Texas. Another warm front on the move across the plains, and another warm up here, Mike, for the central plains. No snow in sight there, or cold weather in sight.
Greg, how active does the forecast look for the east coast of the U.S.?
And that's been really the caveat. They've had a couple of runs of it here with some winter storms that have generated a pretty good go of it with cold and snow. Had one last week, a pretty healthy snow cover for Pennsylvania, New York State, and points on northward. Here's the next weather system, and there will be accumulating snows early in the week in this particular corridor. A couple of snowflakes and sprinkles into the eastern Corn Belt, running from about the border freight on westward. High pressure, sunshine, and seasonal temperatures. And here comes another warm up with dry weather back west of the Mississippi here for the middle to late portions of the week. A couple of snowflakes downwind of the Great Lakes region, and a semblance of winter cold across the Northeast and New England. So again, opportunities to wrap it up if you're behind on fall and early winter field work for the northern and eastern Corn Belt for this week. Windy, colder weather into the Carolinas, maybe a couple of snowflakes, higher peaks of the Appalachians, a cool off slated for Florida, a couple of showers down towards the Keys. Here is the southern branch of the jet, the main polar jet stream segment up here. Pretty quiet weather picture for the lower Mississippi Valley Delta region, again coming off some significant rains over the past couple of weeks. The worst drought area is still eastern Texas, Bayou country, and extending into the mid-south. Little if any organized moisture expected. A couple of scattered showers central and western sections of the Gulf Coast region.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Yes, meteorologist Greg Solier has been watching what's to come from the sky. And Greg, you mentioned next week's going to be somewhat more mild.
Yes.
But we are still expecting precipitation, right?
Yeah, not a lot of it, though. You would think this time of the year we're getting ramped up in winter storm season. Well, we've had some of that into the northeast of New England. Pretty healthy snowpack and snow cover on the ground. But boy, in absence of any substantial snow cover through the northern plains, upper Midwest, even a good chunk of the southern Canadian prairie. And this week, some light snowfall for this particular part of the country. Actually, early in the week, some accumulations in through down eastern Maine and New England. There may be a couple of spots that we maybe measure up to a quarter inch of moisture, but otherwise a pretty good go of it trying to wrap it up for the season on fall field work and the last of harvest through the Corn Belt. Late in the week and towards the weekend, we'll begin to get moisture going here, inch maybe up to 2, about 7 to 10 days out for parts of Texas, Gulf Coast, and in through Florida. Across the southwest, nothing going on. Northern plains, southern Canadian prairie, much quieter weather picture, and Mike, a much quieter weather picture in the Pacific Northwest. Quarter to half inch coming off some 5 to better than 10-inch moisture totals over the past week to 10 days.
Greg, from a temperature perspective, what do you see happening the week that leads up to Christmas Eve?
Boy, anything but a December feel. It's more or less an October feel. Probably some sense of record warmth again, especially where bare grounds play out across Big Sky country, the northern and central plains, across the Corn Belt locales. Look how far north the jet stream goes, Canadian prairie, and then into the northeast of New England. If it were summertime, we'd be forecasting probably 100-degree heat. That's the way the upper air pattern is playing out here, approaching Christmas time. Temperatures a bit below average average across the Gulf Coast in through California. Normal temperatures as well as we welcome in the winter solstice on the 21st, a little before 9:30 in the evening Central Time. A little more moisture above average for Southern California. Can't complain about that. They need the moisture, especially Texas, the Gulf Coast in through Florida. And Mike, look at the expanse of quiet weather picture for Santa across the nation's heartland. We need snow. You may not get it. Not much white Christmas is our forecast in that part of the country.
For the week that begins with Christmas Day, Greg, do you see any cool off?
Some semblance of a modest one trying to get going with a little realignment of the upper air pattern, shifting in from California into the Pacific Northwest, into the Canadian Prairie. The warm ridge, if you will, associated with the northern branch of the jet, kind of retrograding a little bit to the east, building on southward. So pretty good go of it, pretty comfortable. No real cold wave weather in sight. Maybe to get out there with less winter wardrobe in some of the Midwestern areas where you typically expect cold and snow. And here's the precipitation forecast. It is quiet, running from New England down to the Gulf Coast, including Florida. Normal precip across much of the heartland. And active storm track begins to get going up through Canada, the Pacific Northwest, and Northern California.
What are you expecting for that first week of 2024, Greg?
And it's a happy new year, and for some, maybe not with this configuration here with cold air dumping in. We told you it's not going to be a straight run of El Nino and weakening as we get through mid and late winter time. This is the vanguard to that warmth over the eastern part of the country. There's the drop off in temperatures from the Missouri north and westward, and it promises to be a busy one. Here come the organized snows for the Corn Belt and Heartland in January.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
A little old tractor with a blade on it on a farmstead may see a lot of use over the next few weeks. We'll consult with the Greg Solier weather forecast from time to time to get a gauge on just how much that blade may be put to use. We'll talk about one tractor with a blade in Max's Tractor Shed. Brought to you by the folks at Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Well, a blade behind a tractor can get some occasional use, to be sure, the year round. Maybe it's pulling some of the gravel back up onto the drive, up to the farm, and then in the winter time, it can see significant heavy use depending on where that tractor is located to keep the lane open. Well, Michael Drake, in fact, has perhaps moved snow in more than one state with his 1953 Farmall Super C. When he moved from Worland, Wyoming, he didn't leave behind that 70-year-old tractor. In fact, Michael repainted it, and now he enjoys it with a young grandson. I know what that's like, though in my case it's granddaughters. That Super C, with the cylinder back there and the fast hitch, brings some real good utility when the snows of winter arrive there in Colorado. It was likely one of the tasks that the IH folks had in mind when they demonstrated the Super C. You know, the employees demonstrated that square dancing the tractors in an arena at several state fairs back in the summer of 1953. Well, it's a nice old tractor with a lot of utility yet. For Michael Drake, he has it at Falcon, Colorado, a little bit to the northeast of Colorado Springs. Well, let's find out what's going to be selling in the week ahead at Big Iron Auctions. Here's our pal Mark Stock.
Max, big week of auctions. Next week, December the 11th, AgriVision will sell quality equipment. And on December the 12th, get ready, folks, Beard Management will sell machinery. Rick and Ruth Seedorf will have their retirement sale. Reg Stegman will sell equipment on December the 12th, as will Dale Farms. Then on December the 13th, Parallel Ag is a featured seller. December the 14th, Beard Implement will sell equipment. Wernsman Family Farms will have their retirement sale. Randy Bardberry will sell equipment on December the 14th. In Kansas, Heritage Tractor will have their sale on December the 15th. Ellen and Carolyn Oltmans will have their sale as well. So will Wempin Farms. All of the equipment on this is listed on the website. And as always, Max, we have the owner's name and number posted so you can call them if you have questions. Please dial up bigiron.com for your opportunity to purchase quality equipment at year's end. We are excited about what's going on in December and look forward to the new year.
Well, folks, I wanted to look ahead to the end of the year show for this week in agribusiness. Max will be sitting down with Mark Stock of Big Iron Auctions, and they're going to talk through everything that's happened here in the past year.
Oh, that's going to be an exciting show, and a look back, from a year over year. And a lot of the questions we have when we see people across the country is, hey, what have land values really done? And what is the value of my combine worth this year versus what it was worth last year? And how is the effects of COVID affected what happened in 2023? So I'm excited about that episode.
Thanks, Mark. Folks, you can catch that show December 30th and 31st right here on This Week in Agribusiness. Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. Now it's time to meet that next generation of agricultural leaders. This week, we're talking with Caleb Horn. He's serving this year as the president of the Oklahoma State FFA. And Caleb, fill us in. What are the day-to-day responsibilities of a state FFA president?
Well, absolutely. And thanks for having me this morning. I really appreciate the opportunity. But just a few of the day-to-day responsibilities as far as, what I do in my office specifically as state president is one, to just kind of be with the team, make sure that their morale is good, that they love each other, they love what they're doing, and they're passionate about it. I'm a firm believer that if someone's passionate about something and they love what they're doing and they love each other, then they'll be able to do their job to the best of their ability. So my number one responsibility is to make sure that the team is doing good. But on top of that, as far as just a state officer in general, kind of what we do is we go to executive meetings, we plan out events for FFA members. One of my favorite things that we do is do chapter visits, where we actually get to travel the state and go around, see different chapters, teach them about agriculture, about leadership. So that way when they go on, not only on their FFA's chapter level, but as far as a state level and in their community, that they can they're able to make that impact. We're looking for them to make. Absolutely.
Caleb, as you go to your chapter meetings, what are you hearing your members excited about for 2024?
Yeah, so the main thing that's coming up in 2024, well, really there's two big things that we do as far as state officers and as an association. One of them is the Goodwill Tour. With the Goodwill Tour, the state officers, we split into two different groups of 4 and travel the state, going and seeing those chapters, meeting the members, and we have a little bit of curriculum that we present to them, but really it's just to go see them and learn more about, what they do in their chapters. That's really exciting. And then another thing too is the state convention, and that's our big event for the year, and members are very, very excited every year to go to that.
Absolutely. That excitement is palpable. Caleb Horn, president of the Oklahoma State FFA, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you.
Last week, over 600 organic growers from across the country gathered in Monterey, California for the Organic Grower Summit. We had the chance to attend and talk through some of the issues impacting that segment of the industry. We were also on hand as they awarded the Organic Grower of the Year award. This year, it went to producer Rod Braga of Braga Fresh Farms, and I had the chance to ask him what was the significance of winning that award with that crowd.
It's absolutely a huge honor for myself, but really for our 1,900 team members throughout our family of companies. Because in farming, as we all know, we talk about our teams. It has to be everybody doing everything precisely at all the time. So, right now there's somebody planting a lettuce field down in El Centro. There's somebody harvesting a broccoli field in Salinas, California. And those folks really determine more about how well our company does than I do, actually, right?
That makes sense. And 2023 was a wild year for a lot of folks in agriculture. Rod, what were some of the challenges that Braga Farms encountered?
So all the same challenges we usually have, which of course is worrying about water and labor and different government agencies coming in and changing rules. However, this year water became abundance of it, which is fantastic. Instead of what are we going to do about having water here in the Salinas Valley, we had the river flooding for the first time since '95. So that was a major challenge for us. Obviously, trying to get our turns and get everything done after the river came up and flooded really twice, January and March. So for us, a blessing for the water, but it makes things difficult.
It certainly can at times. Rod, looking out to the future, you've been in the organic industry some time. We've seen organics really grow quite quickly. What do you see? What has you excited about this industry as you look to the future?
I think that the healthy eating that you're seeing people around the country and around the world wanting to go to, and then we still see organic still growing faster and faster all the time. And although we're still a small part of the entire agricultural sector, we're of course seeing it, everywhere. And I believe the fact that now that it's in all the retail stores of the country, and the kids are getting used to wanting the organic, seeing the organic at 8, 10, 12, 14 years old. That next generation is going to see it as something that organic is something that they really need and want to have, and not so much like their parents or their grandparents thought it was a choice or not really sure about it. I mean, they're growing up with it, right?
It's becoming kind of mainline in a way.
Exactly.
Rod, thinking about the policy, you mentioned that it's something that impacts agriculture all the time, organic no less than any other segment of the industry. From a policy perspective in 2024, is there anything you're really hoping to see get done?
Well, I think we're going to go look beyond the organic. I think now with regenerative becoming, but if you Google it, I mean, every corporation is putting the word regenerative on what they're doing, regenerative healthcare, regenerative airlines, regenerative. So making sure that we're able to somehow not let that word be watered down so much by other industries and really focus it onto what organic farming is with sustainability and regenerative farming.
Congratulations to Rob Braga, Organic Grower of the Year from the Organic Grower Summit. In my conversations with growers out in California, he wasn't the only one to mention the difference in the ag economy after the rains came in 2023 versus the drought they'd been grappling with for years prior. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on This Week in Agribusiness. We'll be back next week talking about the markets, policy, and other ag information that can impact your bottom line. Catch us right here next week.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.